when someone says that about, and again, not about you guys, but about your friends, I can fix them. Can they fix them?
They're beyond repair.
Yeah. Well, it isn't even just that we're beyond repair, it's that we have to have a reason to be repaired. So first off, you have to know that there's a problem. Secondly, you have to be willing to work on it, and there's a lot that goes along with that. You have to believe that it can be worked on, and you have to believe that it's something that should be fixed. You have to have a reason to fix it. It can't just be, oh, I recognize this need. There's this weird thing with that kind of, with like trying to fix trauma in our lives, that if I point out to you that there was spinach in your teeth, there's a good chance you would, oh shoot, and you would clean it off immediately. But if I point out to you that you're suffering with trust issues because of the way that you interacted with your father when you were 6, we won't as quickly go back and try to clean that out. We get very defensive. If I said to you there's spinach stuck in your teeth, you probably won't go on Instagram and post something stupid like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. You'll probably try to clean the spinach, but if I tell you that there's something else going on deep and psychological, we'll go and post that. And so that tells us, because there's a way that we see the world. And again, none of us sees the world the way that it is. We see the world the way that we are. And over the course of your life, even at this point now, you've developed a way of seeing the world which is dependent on your psychological states, your psychological conditions. And in other words, you've navigated to this point in your life, you have a way of seeing the world, and a way especially of seeing yourself, and it works. It's demonstrated that it works because you're still alive. You're still here. You have friends. My friends like me as I am. They probably don't know you as you are. My family likes me as I am. Maybe. But that's because you're probably very much like them, for better or worse. And so, and I wonder, if you start doing better than your family, will your family still like you? Will your friends still like you? I don't know. I hope so. Because those would be true relationships in your life. But once we kind of realize that the way that we see the world is not as it really is, and that it's hindering us, now we have to take this Jenga puzzle of a personality that we've assembled over the last 18, 20 years, and start taking pieces out, trying to replace it with things, and the whole thing we fear can come crumbling down, because now that can cause you to see the world completely differently. And now that makes you unstable. That goes back to the security that you were saying. As jacked up as I am, at least I'm secure and stable in this world, which otherwise is chaotic and unpredictable. And at least there's this one solid, predictable thing, which is me. And that's why I don't want to change. And now, when we face some kind of a loss, perhaps, and someone tells us, unless you change, I'm never going to talk to you again, well, now we have a reason to change. And again, you have a competition now going on between the instability of changing yourself or the instability of losing a really important person in your life. So now you got to figure out which of those two things are you willing to become unstable over. And so if you really want to hang on to that person, and that's a pretty good way, by the way, of changing oneself, because now you have a person, an anchor to kind of hold on to in this world. So now you can readjust your personality. So if you start to wobble, if that person is the person you need, and I mean that just like need in terms of effectiveness, and you now can kind of hold on to that person when everything else is kind of being shaken, and then when everything starts to re-solidify, you can now live maybe a better adjusted life. And so there's this. Yeah, go ahead.
What you said reminded me of something, and I had another example why people would turn their back on their problems and not try to fix them, willingly. I remember the "Can People Change?" and a little part of that reading, where it says that sometimes people can't change just because the thing that you're trying to change is fundamentally their life. It is a core belief. It is something that literally built upon who they are. And if you try to change that, then that's a whole person. And then I thought about people that might have encountered problems their entire life. They grew up in a problematic space, and their life just kind of rolled downhill, as you'd say. And maybe they found a stable place, but they don't try to improve that stable place just because all they know in their life is problems or tragedies or as such.
And and they hang on to them. We hang on to our reactions of things. What happens if your house burns down? Well, you run away from it, and you find a new one. And you're traumatized by that. What happens if your house doesn't burn down, but you get evicted? Well, you run away from it, and then you go find someplace else and try to rebuild. What happens if you're in a place in life that all of a sudden becomes uncomfortable? Let's see, my house burns down, I get evicted, I run away. So what happens when you find yourself in a place in life where you're uncomfortable? You grab your stuff and you run away. And then you repeat this pattern of running away in your life. So now you have a choice. You can sit back and look at it and say, I run away from all of these problems in life. I run away from, and the hard part is that it is justifiable in some way. I mean, when you're facing a terrible tragedy, of course, you want to get as far away from it as possible. So it isn't completely irrational. It's just like any good lie. There's a strong element of truth to it. In any traumatized condition, there's a strong element of truth in it. And then the problem is that we take that one truth and then we extrapolate it to every other part of our lives. I had a bad relationship with my father, therefore all men are fill in the blank. I had a bad relationship with my mother, and so therefore all women are fill in the blank. We take the very specific and then we make it and we generalize it. And now that applies to so many parts of our life that now we can't build and develop in those areas. You can't form meaningful relationships, at least deep meaningful relationships, because that means you can never trust another person. If you're constantly in a process of running away from life and running away from the problems of life, and again, when we say that, it sounds so terrible to us. It just sounds bad, like, well, I'm not running away, we are though. And that doesn't mean that, and again, there are some problems in life that you should run away from. If someone's punching you in the face every night when you get home, you should run away from that problem. That's a problem that cannot be resolved in the short term, maybe before something terrible happens. But now you'll start to catastrophize, to take the worst case scenario of your house burning down, and then you have an argument with somebody. And then because you have an argument, you grab your stuff and you leave. And you're like, that's it, I'm out of here. And then it seems completely justifiable because you go into a self-defense mode. The problem then, of course, is that when you run away from enough people, they don't pursue you anymore. And now you sit back and you can justify it. See? That's why you can't trust anybody but yourself. You can't depend on anybody but yourself. Well, you've pushed so many people away and you've made it so difficult for people. And besides which, I wonder, how many times have you pursued people? And how hard have you tried to hold on to things to make things work with friends and family and significant others? Or is it just incumbent on everybody else to do that because you have these issues and we should accept you at your worst so that we can deserve you at your best? Find again that people who say things like that are almost never at their best. And again, the hard part there is that it isn't entirely your fault. It's choices that you're making, it's things that you're doing, of course. But you're making choices and decisions based off of your experiences. And what else would you base your actions on except for experience? If every time you walk into a door at home you get punched in the face, at some point you're going to realize, I shouldn't walk through that door anymore. If every time you walk outside you get hit by a baseball, you would probably not walk outside anymore. So it doesn't just take a decision to change, it takes a lot of faith to change. I mean, it takes a lot of, I won't even say faith, it takes a lot of hope to change. Faith, faith is based on something. Faith is based off of experience. Like, I think, I have faith that this is going to be this way because I've seen it before. Hope is just, fingers crossed, walking out with your eyes closed. I really hope this is going to be better this time. It takes a lot of hope. And hope is, it can feel like a foolish thing after a while. But it's a very brave thing to do. By the way, so is skydiving without a parachute. That's also a very brave thing. Just because it's brave doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. But then again, it can be good when it's brave, because we recognize bravery as being a characteristic of humans. Something that makes us what we are. So it takes bravery to pursue the light. We can forgive a child who's afraid of the dark. Experiences have told them, actually a lack of experience and a lack of reasoning has told them that there are monsters in the dark. Now, once they have enough experience to realize that there are no monsters in the dark, now, of course, we would not be as understanding of children. Now, he kind of applies it, the real tragedy, and he says it's a tragedy of life. when we're afraid of the light, when we're afraid of enlightenment, when we're afraid of knowing the truth. And again, the truth, we like to say this all the time, like, you just don't want to know the truth. I would capitalize that word truth there, man. You know, I'd capitalize that word light right there. Because the truth and the light that we're talking about are deep truths. Not just 2 + 2 = 4. Not just you have anger management issues. But the real truth of it is, here's why you have them, and here's what, I can't stress it enough, man. It sounds so sterile, but it's absolutely true. This is what is going to come of your life if you don't deal with those anger issues. You're going to end up with someone who accepts those anger problems, and that's just going to nurture it. You're going to be an angry person, and you're going to act out in angry ways. And you're going to just say things like, that's just the way I am. You know? None of us is just the way that we are. We allow ourselves to be that way. We accept it about ourselves. And again, this is not a finger wagging, you need to change. I don't know what you need, man. All I'm saying is that it's possible. All I'm saying is that you are the way that you are. This is absolutely true. But you can change it. You can pursue enlightenment. You can pursue truth. You can improve. But first you have to see that there's a need for it. And that's a hard thing for a lot of us, especially today. We're constantly being told, accept yourself as you are. The way you are is great, fantastic, wonderful, and perfect. Anybody who doesn't like the way that you are, they're just a hater. That's horrible, horrible advice. Because what if they're right? Instead, we should develop the ability to critically analyze ourselves so that when someone comes along and criticizes us, we can objectively look at it and say, wow, that's probably true. You know? I was talking with somebody a while back, and they were telling me that it's incredibly frustrating to argue with me. Because if you're arguing with me, and you say something like, I don't know, Scallon, you're looking for this, you're looking to see this in the worst possible way. Even if I'm heated, I step back and go, do you really think so? Let's look at this and try to figure it out. Not to be annoying, but because you have to understand that if you're willing to engage in a conversation with a person, then you have to see problems for what they are. The problem is something outside of you two. You guys have to team up together to solve the problem. The problem is not here, probably. The problem is out here. If the problem is here, well, then you're out of luck, man. Because that's just two people doing this constantly. If the problem is out here, well, now you can fight against something. You know? So you have to recognize the problem as being out there. Even if the problem is you have anger issues, see the anger issue as something here. Let's tackle this together. Let's solve this together. Rather than me coming at you. That's not going to solve an anger issue, man. You know, there's a trust issue. The trust issue is out here. How can we solve this trust issue? And this is true between friends, between family, between romantic partners, whatever, any relationship that you're going to have. If you see the other person is problematic, and the problem is in them, of course they're the enemy now. How do you solve that? Spoiler alert, you don't. So, pursue the light, pursue the truth. And that's exactly what darkness is. Darkness is not its own thing. Darkness is just a lack of light. Honesty is just a lack of truth. Health is a lack of unhealthiness is a lack of health. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Neat. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.